Hey, how's it going, guys? Yasukeh here. So recently there's been a little bit of drama in the League community relating to streamers Karasmai and Xblotter, who is a League partner program streamer. There's this video that Karasmai posted on his YouTube channel relating to accusing Xblotter, who's a Riot partnered streamer, of getting boosted and playing on a bot account. And Karasmai wants this sort of proof in video be something that spawns into causing Xblotter to be taken out of the League partnership program. And I had recently gotten into the conversation about this on Twitter when I had made this tweet, and there's been a lot of responses and arguments about everything. And I didn't think Twitter was necessarily the best place to respond properly with the amount of nuance that I would like to have in my argument. So I figured making a video would be a little bit better alternative to that. So I wanted to go over everything one by one, starting first with the claims. The claims of Karasmai are that they are playing on a botted account, an account that they had purchased that was leveled by a bot, which would be account sharing, giving Xblotter giving his account to another player, Camnutes, to duo on so that they could duo and then boost together, and then the duo player intentionally losing games to lower the MMR of the account so that it would be easier to climb when they were duoing. And those are fundamentally the claims, is bot account and duo boosting. Those are the two main claims of the argument. And now talking about the first part of the argument is bot accounts. This goes into my first argument that I had right here, is that if bot accounts are something that would be justification for taking somebody out of the League partnership program, then nobody would be in the LPP. It's very, very well known and common that almost all streamers do buy their Smurf accounts and they don't hand level them. There are very few that do, but no streamers are really going to admit to that because there's no reason for them to. They'll just claim that they legitimately played 200 games of Ghost Heal Draven and got 2 CS in a 36-minute game. So these are the... If bot account would be something to remove somebody from the LPP for, everybody would be removed. So that wouldn't necessarily be justifications because you would have to apply those standards across the board. It's a similar thing with I Will Dominate, and why they didn't ever tell him why he got banned from the LPP. Because if they told him why he got banned from the LPP, then they would have to ban everybody from the LPP. And people in the LPP have gotten chat restrictions and all of this stuff before and then not gotten removed from the LPP. So TOS violations aren't necessarily even justification from Riot's point of view of removing somebody from the LPP, which is just supposed to be a mutually beneficial relationship between Riot and streamers to promote their game. That's fundamentally all it is. So there's a difference between de facto law and written law. So every streamer buys accounts. That's just the law of the land in a de facto sense. That's just in the reality of what happens. Then there's the difference between that and written law. So if Riot doesn't necessarily enforce streamers to not play on bot accounts, then it's effectively not against the TOS for people to do that. It may be written that it's not okay, but if Riot doesn't act on that, then it's functionally fine. And then the second point, going on the duo boosting argument, a couple arguments with this is that first off, even if they were duo boosting is not against the TOS according to Riot. It's perfectly acceptable within their frame. So even if they were intentionally playing on these accounts for the purposes of getting to a higher rating than they normally would be, it wouldn't necessarily be something for Riot to talk about. And it would be something, it'd be more akin to something that somebody would get canceled within the community for, not necessarily canceled by Riot. If Xblotter isn't necessarily a real Challenger Teemo main, but he got duo boosted to Challenger, that's a different story, but that's not something that Riot would go on him with. And even looking at the validity of this being a duo boosting complaint, Xblotter has gotten consistently to higher ranks than his duo solo. And this loss streak is also part of the sort of proof of it being duo boosting. But if you've ever really met a jungler player or talked to them ever, they're not necessarily the most stable people. And loss streaks where they just tilt for a bunch of games is totally within the realm of what junglers would potentially do. This loss streak isn't necessarily hard proof of them duo boosting. So there is plausible deniability within the duo boosting thing, whereas Riot generally likes 100% solid proof with everything that they sort of try to ban people for. Like, even if you look at their game design, they never like to implement solutions unless it's 100% perfect. Which, like an example, voice chat. Riot's never going to implement voice chat because there might be a couple problems with them. And Riot doesn't like things that don't have 100% no downsides. They like to do things themselves in their own Riot way. So another point with this is that if Xblotter, the Teemo main, had to play on this account to get it to a high rating, then why would duoing with this jungler be an effective method to duo boost in the first place? It doesn't necessarily follow that the duo boosting is there, and there is plausible deniability to think that Xblotter and the jungler player were just sharing the account for the purposes of them just being able to duo in a sort of friendly way. Which is something that some players do, is like, hey, I'm playing on an Iron account. I also have an account that's low rated so that we can both duo. That type of account sharing is very common. And there's not necessarily something... There isn't any hard concrete proof going from that situation of just account sharing just so they can duo and hardcore duo boosting. There isn't the connection between that to make that be the case. So none of this necessarily I'm not necessarily trying to dispute any facts that Karasmai has, because all of the facts in his post are real. Like, he looked further into the accounts, and Xblotter on his YouTube channel did play on this Next Challenger account, so that's not really something that can be argued with. It's not... Account sharing is 100% something that Xblotter did, but account sharing is something that also a lot of other streamers have done. So if you're going to punish Xblotter for that aspect, then you would have to punish so many other streamers. And for the duo boosting argument, even if they were duo boosting, that's not against the TOS, and that's not something that's grounds for ruining somebody's account. Like, these kind of win streaks, you've probably seen accounts that are 300 games, 1% win rate on Nunu, and they don't get banned. Riot would never ban anybody for having these kind of this kind of a match history where they have a couple games here. They'd just err on the side of caution and say, hey, maybe they were just having a rough time. Their internet went out or something. This isn't something that Riot would ever ban anybody for. But that also wouldn't necessarily even apply to Xblotter. That would just apply to this account itself, which these games being inted wasn't even something that Xblotter did. That's something that his duo did. So going over a couple points on this is the TOS part is obviously something that he broke, but that necessarily wouldn't be something that you would kick him out of the LPP for. Whereas this is a very common thing that I saw in a couple places, is trying to sort of bring this back on Karasmai for him being very toxic in the past, but this isn't necessarily a good argument against it. It has no relation to it. Karasmai hasn't been toxic for a very long time. Bringing up things from 2018 isn't necessarily fair to Karasmai, and it has nothing to do with the arguments that he's bringing forward. And if you look at the conversations that were had on Reddit, on a couple threads that were later deleted, it's basically just hating on streamers and that everything that streamers do is just bad, and that smurfing is bad. And that it's the reason that they're hard stuck diamonds, and the reason that they'll never actually do anything in their league career. So, fundamentally, it's what it boils down to is the account being bought is 100% true, and the solution to that would be banning that account. But that's not necessarily something that I believe that Riot should get rid of somebody out of the LPP for. Otherwise, you'd have nobody in the LPP. And the duo boosting thing, even if we do assume that it's true, it's not against the TOS, and it's not something that would concern Riot and XBlotter's LPP status. That would be something to expose XBlotter for being a fake challenger player, and for him to be sort of canceled by the community. That's not something that would have any relation to Riot. So that's pretty much all of my thoughts on it. I hope I summarized it up well. If anybody feels like I've mischaracterized anything about the arguments, just go ahead and @ me on Twitter, comment down in the YouTube section. I'll go ahead and post all of the links relevant to this down below. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye. Good night.